Good afternoon. Welcome to Comp 620 and 422 Information Privacy and Security. Today we're talking about denial of service. I got a few announcements here. Reminder that registration has begun for spring classes. You should see your advisor, figure out what classes you should take, and register for them. Always be mindful of prerequisites. So if you're going to need a class next year, you may need to take the prerequisite this spring. Watch out for that. Course evaluations are coming up. Actually, they are started. So far, nobody in this class has done a course evaluation, but that's okay. We've got plenty of semester left. This runs until I think December 10th or something. But do be sure to do it for all your classes. They are important. I think the administration puts more credence in them than they should, but they do watch them carefully. Tomorrow, November 9th, is Wellness Day. There are no classes here at A&T. Take the day off, relax. Yes, be well. So no classes tomorrow. And I guess there's an event 3 o'clock at the Williams, my dining hall in the parking lot there. So might go to that if you wish. Here's the schedule coming up. As you can see, we are talking about denial of service, which is chapter 7. Chapter 7 is rather short. Take a look at that. We're also, by the way, in addition to denial of service, we're talking about online advertising and click fraud. Topic we hadn't covered, I thought we should discuss. Next Monday, which is an online only class. Those of you here in live studio audience, don't bother coming in tomorrow. It's online only. You can watch on Zoom at 4:30 to 5:45, or you can see it on YouTube in the evening. And that's just one small section. Read chapter 27.4 for that. A week from today, we'll be back on privacy issues. And then week after next, on Monday, November 20th, we're talking about the artificial intelligence impact on cybersecurity. That's not in the book and not anywhere I can find, but I'm making it up. So we'll talk about it then, because there is a significant impact. And then, of course, Thanksgiving is 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from tomorrow. But 2 weeks from today is a A&T vacation day. No classes. Okay. Any questions about the schedule or announcements? Then moving on, I wanted to talk about online advertising. I think I've mentioned this briefly before, but let me just go into the details of how this works. You've probably seen it. You've seen it in action. Anybody who's gone to the web, advertisements pop up here and there. Not only just advertisements, but advertisements on items that you've looked at somewhere. Okay, there are 3 groups involved. There are publishers. There are people who have websites that do something and would like to make some extra bucks by showing advertisements. These people get paid, so they want to put advertisements on their website to try to pick up some money. And then there are advertisers, the people who have companies that want to advertise their products to entice you to purchase their products. And then in between them is the ad network. People who distribute the advertisements from advertisers onto the publishers and direct them to people so that they're not just any old ad. They show ads that they believe the customer is going to want to watch. Because that's much, much more effective to show the customer an ad for a product they are likely to purchase than just randomly show them whatever ad you have. There's a lot of things I'm not going to buy, the things that you might want to buy that I don't. Okay, so I have about 3 slides here that go over the details, and I can see where I got these slides. All right, starting at number 1. You're on your device, and you decide to go to a web page. Click on a link or type in the URL and go to that website. Okay, the web page is downloaded to your device. And as we talked about before, a web page is usually multiple files and are each downloaded separately. There is the basic HTML that you requested. And inside that HTML, there are multiple images or other files that will be downloaded. In this case, their ads are going to be downloaded from the ad network. So each of these, the page, there's multiple requests to go to the ad network. Adclick.com is one that I see used a lot. Google has one I've seen a couple times. You go there, and it gets an image that is shown. Okay. So again, per the request, it sends a request to the ad server. Says, give me this file that my HTML says I should have. It downloads it. Could be JavaScript picture. Ad server sends the script, then certain parameters that will then send, the parameters that are sent in HTML, basically HTML, https://www.acme.com question mark, and then it's name equals value, so forth, to send parameters. You run the script and it goes out and gets advertisements from the ad server. The ad server chooses what ads it believes in. Now, what cookies are taking place here, because as you go to the ad server, it's sending the cookies that you've been to the ad server before, it knows who you are, it's sending these cookies. And then it chooses the ad and sends them down, and they're displayed in your browser in the appropriate location in the HTML. You all seen this. And particular thing I notice, if you go to, say, Amazon, and you just look, don't buy anything, you go look at a widget, and then you go to some other completely unrelated web page that has nothing to do with Amazon, and you'll see an advertisement for widgets on the side. Okay. Now, money, of course, is being exchanged for this because the advertisers are paying for the advertisement, and the publishers, the people who have the websites that show this information, they're getting paid. And so there's several models for paying them. There is the charge per views. In other words, how the advertiser are charged for how many times is their ad shown on somebody's browser. That cost per milli, or that would be 1,000 times. Then there's cost per click. That's the one I see most often, is the pay per click or cost per click. How many times is that advertisement clicked? You have the advertisement there. Probably heard the words clickbait. It shows something with an interesting tagline, trying to convince you to click on this. That's, of course, they want click. Advertisers are charged click. And then there's cost per action. That's not only just click, but do you go out and buy something? You actually usually buy something, or do you do what they want? Not just click on it, but go out there and buy something. Then that advertisement is truly effective, and the advertiser is very willing to pay the ad organization to do that because they've successfully sold something. When you go to your search engine, be it Bing or Google or whatever you do your search with, DuckDuckGo, there are companies that pay to get their listings right at the top. And they can get in Google and Bing, they'll give you a link. They'll tell you this is a sponsored ad, that these are sponsored links. And companies are paid to get their stuff right up front so you'll see it, because they want you to click on those instead of the 1,000 some other places you could click on. So they want theirs up front. So they pay for that. And sponsors. Then after that, after the ones at the top that people have paid for, then you'll see a list of search results that meet your criteria. The ones that, other than the sponsored ones, are there sorted typically by what the search engine believes is most likely ones to meet your needs. Search engines keep track of what you've been doing, look carefully at your request, and try to sort the request by relevance so that the most likely response will be at the top. Although, again, the sponsored ones go up in front of that. It's been my experience that sometimes the sponsored ones are very remotely related to what you are looking for. If you search for widgets, the sponsored ones may be thingamajigs. It's not what you asked for, but they paid to put their name up there, so they're going to get it. Okay, ad fraud. This is, again, usually often a legal violation, a violation of the arrangement. So people do not play fairly. Publishers, that is, companies that have the website. Think of www.jokeoftheday.com. Joke of the Day may have multiple advertisements on it. That's how they make their money. They don't make their money just because you want to watch, look for a joke. They get money from the advertisers. And so the advertisers, of course, pay per click or pay per view. And so the publishers want the companies to think that a lot of people, millions of people are looking at their webpage and clicking on it. So they cheat. There are multiple ways to cheat. There are obvious ways. You can just have a human go out there and click on it again, go to the next, keep clicking on it. Of course, that's pretty dull and boring, and you can always build a computer program to do that for you, and not just one computer program, but you can run it on multiple machines. We talked previously about botnets. We talk about botnets? No, maybe not. Well, later today, we're going to talk about botnets. But they are networks of machines that have been attacked by malware so that they will do the bidding of the controller. And those machines that, okay, Monday, I sometimes forget, I made these slides up, began it for a while. Yes, anyway, if we didn't talk about them before, we'll talk about them today. Botnets, a bunch of machines that have been compromised, and a very easy, simple thing for the compromised machines to do is to go out and logically click on these items on the website. And that way, it's not coming off one machine, that all these clicks are coming from a wide variety of machines, wherever they've been able to compromise the bot. And then, of course, publishers can cheat too, because they might display ads in a way that you can't see them. Oh, yes, we displayed it. It's there. Well, nobody paid for it. But they can put an awful lot of them out there that you'll display. Advertisers can also cheat. Everybody can cheat because they can click on the ads of their rivals, because often the advertisers are paying on a pay-per-click arrangement. And so if they go out there and click on the rivals' links, of course, their automated system or the humans or their botnets aren't going to buy anything. They're just going to click on it. And therefore, it's going to cost their rival money to pay on the pay-per-click system, because something's clicking on it, even though it's not a human who has no intention of buying anything. Okay, with all these opportunities to cheat here and there, people have been trying to avoid that. Google, who does advertising and has a big search engine, you might have heard of them before. They have the ad traffic quality team, which looks very carefully trying to figure out if these clicks are fraudulent or valid. And they note that 77% of all the internet exposure or false clicks are by bots. So of course they are. Humans are expensive to click. Or you can probably go to a third world country and have them sit there clicking on their phone all day. And there are many other companies that will do this. I would like this one. There's 10 trillion interactions per week. That's a lot. 10 trillion is a big number. Okay, so we have a clicker question right here early, just to see if you've been paying attention. Ready? There it is. Well, everybody online clicked A, and most people in class clicked A. Yes, publishers want to increase the number of clicks in their ads because they get paid for the click. The advertisers do not. Advertisers pay for it. And of course, publishers get paid for the advertisements, so they're not going to pay extra for the ad, no ads. Although, if you're only showing ads for your company, then why did you go through an ad system anyway? Publishers have defenses. They sometimes when you have a publisher, you only want certain ads. You want to restrict the ads. For instance, if you're the Acme widget company, you don't want advertisements from United Widget on your site. That would be bad. You don't want so they can restrict that. And sometimes they want to keep their advertisements, avoid drug, sex, rock and roll, and other things that they might not like. So they will limit what can be on their advertising. And the advertising groups allow that. Advertisers can also protect themselves. Advertisers can watch, since they since when someone clicks, they are directed to the advertiser's website. The advertiser's website can look and see what is the IP address where this is coming from. If you have multiple clicks from the same IP address, from the same computer, oh, wait, that's not Cricket. That's the same person. So they will stop that. Take timestamps when the user do this. So they can carefully know, they can carefully comb through their information and say, yes, these are fakes. People are, if you got 1,000 clicks during a minute from the same website, that's not a very interested shopper. And they have caught people in the past. A couple of years ago, they found this Russian who was fined almost $4 million and sentenced to 10 years in prison for click fraud. He was the head of a big organization, big system botnet to do click fraud. And they caught him. And $3.8 million is a lot of money to me. Yes, I like the fact he had 750,000 IP addresses that he used to send things from. So to avoid everything coming from the same IP address, he had a whole bunch of them. If only one request was made from each of his 765,000 IP addresses, that'd be probably enough to make your money. Okay, that's all about advertising, the advertising system, of course, 3 levels, how that works. And you can see that there's potential for fraud in every level. But there are people working carefully trying to avoid this. Okay, we want to talk about denial of service. We mentioned this like the first day. Security gold, frequently mentioned as the CIA: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I also added 3 more A's, so it's authentication, authorization, and anonymity. But the first big A, availability, is what we're talking about today. Keeping your system available and trying to avoid denial of service attacks. And denial of service, it's like it sounds. Somebody is doing something so that other users cannot use your system. A common concept here is to crash your system, stop your system somehow, so other people cannot access it. Denial use. And there are basic denial of service, we abbreviate DOS. And then there's distributed denial of service, which you'll see is DDoS. And generally, DDoS systems are the most effective attacks. Okay, how do you know somebody's trying to do a denial of service attack against you? Well, things slow down. accessing the website becomes very slow. You sort of get in there, anything through, generally because they're overwhelming the site, many more requests in, and so response is very slow. You may not even be able to get to a particular website. And also, if it's an email-oriented or message-oriented denial of service attack, you'll get thousands of emails from these people. Yes, if you get, imagine your email, you open up your email and suddenly there's 10,000 email messages, all with different, reported different people sending it. Now that's probably fake, and different subjects, because that's also fake. Somebody just goes to a dictionary, finds a word, puts it up there, and that's the subject. How do you find the real ones? How do you find people that you actually know? So that could be a denial of service. And now I mentioned it fills up your resources, it fills up email server. All right. I want to spend some time talking about deadlock. Deadlock is a means of causing a system to hang. It's an operating system concept, a programming concept. So those who are non-programmers, just watch carefully. We're going to talk about this programming concept and then explain why it's important for cybersecurity. Deadlock is where things get stuck. I love this picture. You can see cars cannot go, left, right, up, or down because they're all blocked by other cars. Yes. It happens at A&T sometimes where people drive into the intersection when they can't get through. Remember the basic driving rule: if you can't get through the intersection, do not move into the intersection. Okay, but these people didn't listen to it. This, by the way, I'm happy to say, is not a US website, because the writing, zoom in on that, the writing on the buildings is not in English. So it's probably not United States. But yes, and of course, if an attacker knows how this works, they can be able to force a deadlock, get things stuck. But having taught multiple thread programming, multi-process programming for several years, I can tell you most deadlocks are caused by poor programming. All right. Your laptop, your desktop, your phone all have multiple cores, multiple processors in the machine. It can do multiple things at once. Each part of the program, you can have multiple programs running simultaneously, executing at the same time, or you can have different parts of the same program. When you write a program, you can split off, spawn another thread that will have two things executing at the same time. If you have multiple cores, they will, of course, run in different cores. Even if you don't have multiple cores, you only have one core, or you have more things to do than there are cores to execute at any given instant, that's okay. The operating system will very carefully share them. It will run one of the threads for a while and then suspend it, bring in another one, run that for a while, back and forth. You never notice this. Also, most programs do not execute for very long before they stop to do something, before they stop and wait for the user to enter something, or waiting for a file, waiting for the network. So they only execute for a short period of time. And even if they execute for a long period of time, the operating system will pause them for another program. And since it's doing this on just a couple milliseconds, humans don't notice. It looks as if it's running continuously. So you have multiple things running. And in fact, yes, if you ever go to the, okay. Okay, yeah, well, I'm not even going to do this. I'm not even going to share my screen. I opened up the task manager, which none of you can see, but it's telling me that there are 1,841, 43, that changes, threads running in my machine, even though there are only 177 programs running. Now, I mentioned 177 processes of programs. I do not have 177 programs I started. These are things that run in the background. Many of them are parts of the operating system. The operating system has many programs that run at user level that keep it running, things that keep the network going, and all sorts of other features. and they're out there running. So there's about 11 threads on average per program. So a lot of things happening in parallel. Deadlock. What is this deadlock he speaks of? Deadlock occurs when two or more tasks, either programs or threads, are waiting for each other and they can't proceed. They're stuck. A is waiting for B is waiting for A in some way that they're just not going to go forward. Deadlock is a permanent blocking set. If there exists any way in which the threads could execute, in other words, if you have A, B, and C running, if A ran first and then C ran and then B ran, we get to done, and it's not a deadlock. Deadlock occurs when there is no solution. And you'll see this. A lot of time things will come up, and if you have a deadlock program, it's just not doing anything. It just sits there and nothing happens. Or sometimes certain things will happen, but you click on something and it doesn't go any further. You might be able to click on a button, but then nothing happens because it's all waiting. Again, one part of the program is waiting for the other part of the program, and they're stuck. Yes, and then there's this message: the program is not responding. You want to kill it, or do you want to just go on? And you'll see that. In the Microsoft Windows world, sometimes programs will gray out, and Microsoft will tell you it's stuck, and that's a hung system. Do you want to kill it? No, wait. You want to keep on waiting? You want to kill it? Whatever. Okay. But this happens, sadly, far more often than you like. And, of course, it does happen. Some Microsoft systems, Microsoft Office things, and that's built by computer professionals. These guys aren't novices. People who write the Microsoft Office are professionals who've been doing it for a long time. It's sometimes difficult to catch because it can be a very complicated system. Okay. To avoid problems with multiple things happening at once, you often have what we call critical sections. And I'll explain in a minute why you need a critical section. And there are multiple ways to create a critical section. Critical section is where only one thread or one program can be doing a particular task at a time. And the other ones, if they wish to do it, will be stopped and have to wait until the first one is done. There are synchronized methods. If you have Java, you have synchronized methods, synchronized objects. If you are also can use semaphores, when it gets down to the hardware, there are instructions that do this, instructions that execute do something in one fetch cycle that will lock it if it's locked and stop if it's not locked. I think there's somebody out there who doesn't have their microphone muted. Do that, please. Okay. And moving on. Locking. Let's show an example for locking. All right. In this chart, we've got two programs running. We have an account value in a file. It's $1,000. And we'll have time going from left to right in the two programs. Now, the programs execute. Top program reads the account value into local memory. And this is a file, reads it into the memory of that program for $1,000. And then some short time after that, the second program, the bottom program, reads the account value. And it gets 1,000 because that's what it is. Then the top program subtracts $600 from the account value. And now the value it has in its memory is 400 because 1,000 minus 6 is 400. Meanwhile, at the bottom, that program adds $100 to the account value. And then the top program writes back its $400 because it's done everything correctly. It read in the thousands, subtracted the 600, wrote the result back out to the file. That's just as it should. And then the bottom one also behaved correctly. It read in the 1,000, added the 100, and write that back. But now, since the write ended after that, we now have $1,100 in the account. And that subtract of 600 seems to have never occurred. Questions about that? Yes, down here, we did this Yes, okay. How do you withdraw $600 from an account? The account information is kept in a file on a disk. The program reads in the account balance, subtracts the 600, writes the new balance out to the file. Meanwhile, after it has read in the account balance, back up on this a little bit. After it's read in the account balance, another program reads in the account balance for the same user, the same account. So now we have two programs who read in that account balance. And they both read in 1,000 because that's what it's in the file. Then the first one subtracts it. By subtracting 1,000, not modifying the file, they're subtracting 600 from the value they read into their program, from the program variable in memory. Meanwhile, the other one added 100. So we have two different programs with two different values. And then they write them back. The first one writes back to 400, which is correct. And then that's overwritten by the second one, which did its local thing correctly. It added 100 and wrote it back out. So now we show a balance of $1,100 in the account where it shouldn't be that much. We've lost the subtraction of 600. It should be $500 less. It should be, that would be $600.
So what's this between $1,100? That's not good.
Well, if you're an accountant, you certainly don't think so. An auditor would dislike that tremendously because here we've done two things to it. We're supposed to subtract 600 and add 100. But that's not what appears. All we see is the result of adding 100. The result of subtracting 600 was lost, overwritten by the second program.
So is the account a global variable there?
The account would be a value in a file, yes, a global variable. So basic problem we have is we've copied a global variable into local memory, memory only seen by one program or one thread, modify it, write it back to the global variable, and that may modify that what other processes see. Yes. Now, this example didn't have any deadlock, it just causes one. The proper way to do this is the top program should read it and lock it. Do some action that says, I am going to have exclusive use of this count for a few milliseconds. Read it in, subtract 600, and when the second one comes by and wants to read it, it is blocked. It cannot read that because the account is blocked. And only when this thing writes the result out, it will then release it. This one continues on. It's been suspended for a few milliseconds, and then it gets to run. In that case, instead of running interleaved, they run sequentially. Then it would get you the correct result.
So both of these are running concurrently.
Yes. Try to think of this as right. Try to think of them in time. They're running at the same time. At this point of time, this one does. At this point of time, the second one runs. If they were to run sequentially, then they get a different result. And actually, it doesn't matter in this case if the top one ran first and then the bottom one, or the bottom one ran first and the top one. Either of those two sequential executions would give you the same result. But by mixing them up, you don't get that result. And most auditors would like to see the result of sequential execution, not the result of the intermingle execution.
But what about the operating system?
Yes, you should have learned about this in operating systems. I taught operating systems for several years, and I tried to teach it to the students. Okay, now, even when you lock things, you can have problems. Let's say we're moving money from account A to account B. So we have to go out. We now know that we have to lock them. So we can lock account A and we lock account B. Then we read the values, subtract the money, put the results back at A and B. We're taking money out of A, put it into B, put the new balances back into A and B, and then we're done. But let's imagine we have two threads. Thread 1 on the left, thread 2 on the right. Thread 1, first thing is go out there and acquire, it's going to lock resource A. In this case, pick lock account A. Then it's going to lock account B. On the right, it's going to lock account B and then lock account A. Well, what if thread 1 locks A at the same time thread 2 locks B? Or at least before thread 1 wants to lock B and thread 2 wants to lock A later on. Then they're stuck because at the second row, thread 1 wants to lock B, but it can't because B is already locked. Thread 2 cannot lock A because it's already locked by thread 1. So they're stuck. They're stuck forever. They're waiting for another thread to, that is not going to give it up. There are 4 necessary conditions for deadlock. You will not have a deadlock if you don't have these 4 conditions. Mutual exclusion, no preemption, hold and wait, and circular wait. And I'll explain each one of them in gory detail. Okay, mutual exclusion. That simply means that you need this resource all yourself. You have exclusive access. I say the word resource because it's very vague, but it could mean a file. It could be a variable in memory, just something that that program is going to use and not allow the other programs to use. It's going to lock it using synchronized methods or tested sets or semaphores, whatever you're using. So it's going to lock mutual exclusion. So it's going to have exclusive access. If you can share access, you have a problem. Sometimes you can share access. Easiest one is read-only files. I can read a read-only file and you can read the read-only file at the same time because nothing's going to change. So if both of our programs are reading the file, fine, we can do that together. We have shared access. The problem occurs when you want mutual. Usually that occurs if you're changing the value or you intend to change the value of that. No preemption. Some systems provide preemption. That is, some high priority process can come by and take over and do things. So the processes have priority. And so if a high priority process comes in, it can take the resources from the other one. Often what happens in some systems that do this, if a high priority process comes in that must run now and isn't going to wait for the other ones to run, it will terminate the processes that have these resources held. And those programs will stop. Now, hopefully, they can restart. And some systems provide the ability to restart a process. Oops, that didn't work. Try it again. But if a process can combine and steal resources from another one, then the high priority process will run to conclusion. And then the other lower priority process can run, possibly if there's multiple priorities in priority order until finally the whole thing's done. So it's not a permanent deadlock because the high priority ones can come by and steal from the others. And then the more complicated rule is hold and wait. In order to have a deadlock, you have to have at least one resource that you've acquired, you're holding on to, and now you want to acquire a second resource. So you have to grab one, and now you're going for a second one. And imagine again, the banking program where we're going to move money from your account and put it into my account. I like that. So I lock your account, and then I have to lock my account. So at some point in that program, I've locked your account, and now I want to go lock mine. So I have one resource, your account, hold, and I'll go for the other one. I might have to wait for it if it's not available. Okay. Now, I always get this solution, having taught this for years. Well, why don't we lock them both at once? Well, how might you do that? Both at once is kind of a vague concept. You might go, I'll lock account A and lock account B. And I go, well, lock A, and if I can't get it, I'll stop. Well, then the problem still exists. You can't just wave your hands and say, I'll do this. What if the resource, what if one of them isn't available? So that's a waving of hands. It doesn't work. You have to, at some point, you have to do it. At some point, you have to lock A and then lock B. No, because you really can't lock both simultaneously. You have to, even if you say, I'm going to lock both, well, somewhere it's going to have to lock them one at a time, because locking them both isn't always an easy thing to do. There may be no mechanism to lock them both. They may not be the same things. One may be a memory location, one may be a file. You just can't lock them both at once. Okay. In the hold and wait, you have to have a circular wait. You have to have a cycle in the resource diagram. And I'll show you the resource diagram in a moment. If there isn't a cycle in the resource diagram, then there isn't a deadlock. And so, yeah, again, if there's not a cycle, that means there is some order in which the process can run. Everybody runs to completion. It's all over. All right, let's look at the diagram. we're going to have square boxes which represent resources like files or memory locations that you need, shared information, like the account value. There may be multiple units of that resource. Sometimes there's the same thing. That you may need something. There's multiple copies of it. You can get multiple copies. You just need one of them to share. But when you get one, you get that one exclusively. Another program can get the other one. And okay, so we're going to draw an arrow from the resource to the task if it is allocated. In other words, if this task has this one resource of this type of resource allocated to it, and it's locked, we'll show it that way. On the other hand, if it couldn't get it, if the task being a green circle is waiting for that unit, will show as an arrow going to that. In other words, this resource only has one unit, and that one's allocated to somebody else. So this task is going to wait. All right. So here is a deadlock cycle. A has resource 2 allocated to it. B has resource 1 allocated to it. A is waiting for 1. B is waiting for 2. C is over here, has resource 3, and it doesn't care. It's not involved at all. But A and B are deadlocked. They're deadlocked because, assuming the resources can't be shared, there's no stealing of resources, and there is a loop, holding and waiting. A is holding resource 2 and waiting for 1. B is holding 1 and waiting for 2. There is a loop. C's not deadlocked. Another clicker question here. Let's try this one. There we go. Okay. All right, not a lot of choices here. There is a lot of points to pick C. Upside. Oh. Yeah, there's always a wise guy. Yep. Okay. Most people picked A. That's too bad because that's the wrong answer. The answer is B, false. Let's explain why that is so. Okay. The 4 requirements are requirements. They are necessary but not sufficient requirement for deadlock. In other words, you cannot have a deadlock if you don't have all 4 of these requirements. But just because you have all 4 does not necessarily mean you have a deadlock. There are situations where you can have all 4, but not a deadlock. Here is a requirement, a resource diagram that doesn't have a deadlock. Okay. A has got a resource 2 allocated to it, it's waiting for 1. B has resource 1, it's waiting for 2. That's our deadlock. But C is over here. It has resource 3 and one of the resources. C isn't impacted. So C can run using resource 2, and eventually programs come to an end. When they end, they release the resources. Or, of course, they may easily release the resources before they end, but C is not inhibited from running. It can run, and eventually either the program terminates and releases the resources, or the program intentionally releases the resources. And when it releases resource 2, there's the next one, then B can get it. Okay, well, all right. We're in little dots here. There are 2 units of resource 2. Two things. You want to, I'm trying to think of not example, or there are multiple resources, which occurs frequently. Buffers, you want to acquire some space and memory, and there's two of them available. And program A's got one, program C, then B, which is waiting for that, will get that resource, the one that C releases. Then it will have both resources, and then it can run to completion. When it's complete, it will release resource one, or of course, it may not actually come to the end. It may just simply decide, okay, I acquired the resource, done what I need to, release it, and then program A can continue on. So that is a sequence by which the programs can run to completion. Deadlock is permanent. There is no way, no sequence of execution that will get you out of deadlock. Here there is. It's C runs, B runs, A runs, and then everybody runs to completion. Everybody understand that? Yeah, necessary but not sufficient. I don't know if they tell you that in undergraduate operating systems. But if you're really into graph theory, there's something called a knot. If you have a knot, you have a deadlock. Not a knot, there is no deadlock. But this is not graph theory, so forget that. Okay, when you write programs, you want to avoid deadlocks. You don't want that program to ever deadlock. And there are things you can do in the creation of that program to avoid deadlocks. Very simple. There are 4 requirements for deadlock: mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, and circular wait in the graph. If one of those doesn't exist, then you won't have deadlock. So all you have to do is write your programs out, structure it some way so that one of them, it only needs to be one. You can have 2 or more, but you only need, so one of them doesn't occur, in which case, since it's necessary to have a deadlock, to have all 4, one of them doesn't occur, there will be no deadlock. Okay, here's another clicker question. This is a more serious clicker question. Hang on, online people, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. People have voted for every possible solution, but the real answer is B. Okay, I think I mentioned you can't really lock both accounts at the same time. It's a nice idea, but that just doesn't happen. Don't lock the accounts before changing them. I think I showed an example what happens if you don't lock them, you get the wrong answers. None of the above, nope, because B is correct. Always lock the accounts in numerical account order. Accounts have account numbers, they always have, or if they don't have account numbers, at least they have names or something connected to it to identify the account that's unique. Sort them in order, always lock the lowest numbered one first. So it doesn't matter whether you're going to take money out of it or put money into it, always lock the lowest account one, then lock the higher numbered one. Why? Because there will never be a loop. You have 2 programs, 2, 3, 4, a dozen programs running at the same time, as long as they lock them in that order. When you think about it, you're always going for a higher one. So it's never the case that you've got one locked that somebody else who's got that one is going to come back in. There's no loops. Everything is going in, all the links are going in the same direction. You lock them in order. That is the easy solution. By the way, I used to teach operating systems for many years. This is a favorite exam question. I put that out there multiple times. When you think if you do it multiple times, students would know. Okay. In addition to deadlock, there's starvation. Starvation's similar, but not exactly the same. Starvation is when one task just never gets the chance to run, even though it's not quite deadlocked. Imagine a busy system. Somebody wants to write to a file and needs to lock it to write to it. Meanwhile, there's lots of other processes coming through and reading it. And when they read it, of course, the one that wants to lock it can't lock it because another program is reading it. And they're not inhibited from starting. So they can always start anytime because they don't need to lock it. But when they do use it, they're preventing somebody else from locking it. And so if you have a system of one thread wants to write to it, but there's lots of threads coming through that want to read it, well, it's not a deadlock. If the thing had slowed down and there weren't any threads that wanted to read it, that want to get through. But you get starvation. And that looks like deadlock, but it's not really deadlock. It, by the way, is more difficult to solve. So, yes, this is an operating system question. What the blazes does it have to do with cybersecurity? Because you have the opportunity to cause a program to halt, to deadlock. And if you don't write your programs correctly so that it might deadlock, then an attacker can take advantage of that and create a condition that will cause the deadlock, which of course causes your system to stop running. Let's again go back to the banking system. Banking, by the way, is not the only answer, but it's an easy one to understand because you're moving money out of account A and account B. Okay. Assuming that some novice programmer who didn't go to A&T wrote the banking system and improper did not take care of the locking situation. So an attacker realizes that this could happen. So the attacker generates thousands, as many requests as they can, as fast as they can, moving money from A to B, and then an equal number of moving money from B to A. Now, you don't have to have a lot of money in your account. You're just moving a dollar back and forth. And if they work correctly, it's just add a dollar, subtract a dollar, add a dollar, subtract a dollar. But eventually, since you're doing it in both directions, A to B and B to A, if you don't have the locking correct, it's going to deadlock. Somebody's going to have A and try to lock B. Somebody's going to have B and try to lock A. And then stops. It might continue to stop. It stops. Also, once you get stuck and they both have A and B locked, then all the other requests to lock A and B, they're going to wait because they can't get it. So now all of a sudden everything comes to a halt and the system stops working. So an attacker, by doing pretty much sort of legitimate things, because it's not against the rules to move money from account A to account B, has caused the system to halt. Okay. All right, that's enough from threads. Anybody have any thread questions? Or multiprocessor? Yes, locking causes programs to halt. And if you intentionally do that, then you can cause the program to stop. Okay, last time we talked about fork bombs. This is another way to cause the denial of system. There's multiple concepts. The fork bomb is pretty simple. You just create additional process. The fork function creates a new thread. It needs a new copy of this program. So if you have a program and it does a fork, now you have two copies of that program running at the same time. This one's while true. I mean, this is usually a while statement. Inside the parentheses, you say some condition like while A is greater than B, while X equals Y, or whatever you want. But while true means, well, forever. This is a infinite loop. This is forever and ever, create more process. So all of a sudden, there's one copy of the program when you start, and then there's two, and then each one of those creates more. Now you have four, and then you have 8, and it exponentially zooms up into the computer's full copies of this program, and nothing else happens. There are multiple ways to do this. You don't just have to do it with process. I use process because it's very simple. One little line shows you it's working. You can allocate anyone. Go out there and grab network bandwidth. You can start programs that start all out there using up all your network space or file space or your CPU, whatever it is. And Stack Overflow. This is slightly, okay, cause an application to fail, just doing something that causes the system to stop working, and then other users cannot use it. So denial of service is simply stopping the system so legitimate users cannot use it. Why would you want to do that? Well, if it's your competitors, you just assume that they are not running. Or imagine one side, country A doesn't like country B. That occurs occasionally in the world. And so country A will try to crash the resources of country B, so their country B's computers do not work. It's been known to happen. Ping. Okay, let me talk about ping because it's a popular way to stop things. Ping is a very simple program that you can use to find out if another system is there. You can ping it, it sends a message to the other system. The other system gets your short, simple message, says, oh, yes, and sends back a short, simple reply saying, I am here. It's used to check network connections. Is everything working? Is this system up? Is the server crash? You can just send a ping request, say, do you exist? And you have a question?
Yes. See if I'm a program.
Computer, usually, another computer, sorry, is used to check another computer. So if you're wondering, try to do something and it didn't work, is that computer really there? Is there a www.acme.com? Go ping, and it's a command line, or you can run it, runs on Windows, it runs on Apples, it runs on Linux. I think there's even versions to have it run on your phone, but I haven't tried that. It's very simple. It just sends a special message. It's a ping message. And whenever a computer gets a ping message, all it does is send back a reply saying, yes, I am here. And often used to go when you question, is this the right URL? Does that computer exist? You do a ping on it and it says, yes, you can get there, or no, you can't. Yeah, if you're doing networking stuff, it's pretty handy. But there's the ping of death. Imagine you send out a request to all the computers on a network, and you can do a broadcast. In other words, in most networks, there's a broadcast feature. You can send out a message saying, everybody receive this. So the attacker sends out one message, and it's a ping request that goes to everybody with a fake return address. The return address is that of a victim computer. So say A wants to attack B. A broadcasts a ping request falsifying its return address, saying it came from B. Everybody gets the ping, and of course, they simply respond saying, yes, I'm here. And all the responses go to B. So if you have a big network, all of a sudden, every computer on the network is sending computer B a message saying, I'm here. And if A just does this over and over and over again, B is going to get a lot of messages. That can slow down what B is doing, slows down the whole network. So that's the ping of death. Now, in order to reduce the threat, there's several things. A lot of networks or firewalls, including the ones here at A&T, do not allow ping messages to go through. So you can ping a computer that's in this building. We're here in Monroe Hall. No, we're not in Monroe. We're in Graham Hall. Monroe's next door. And since all the computers in Graham Hall are in one network, and Monroe Hall may even share the network, maybe even McNair, but we're in one group. I can ping any computer here in Graham Hall, maybe the ones in Monroe or McNair, but I can't ping something that has to go through one of our A&T routers, because the router is not going to let that ping message go through. It simply sees a ping and says, nope, we don't like pings, and it just drops them. Pings are a type of ICMP message. Yes, Internet Control Message Protocol, I believe. Yes, P for protocol, I for internet. Yes, I think that's Internet Control Message Protocol. It does other things besides IC. There's a whole list of ICMP functions that may occur, some of which are very useful, like telling you sent something in the wrong direction. It will get there, but there's a better way. You can you can respond back to the source, say, there's a better way to send that message. This is what you do. And all sorts of other things that it's used to do non-critical responses. It tells computers that there's a better way to do things, but it's not required, but it's suggested that you do things. Sometimes it's very useful. All right, that's the ping. Probably the most serious way of stopping a system is called a SYN flood. We'll talk about that. Okay, so there's multiple protocols out there for the network, but TCP is probably the most popular, Transport Control Network. And most, but not all, there's TCP and another one called UDP. UDP and TCP do most of the stuff on top of the internet. So you see TCP/IP, it's often written TCP/IP. IP is internet protocol. That's network layer. TCP is transport layer. And TCP is connection oriented. By the way, UDP is not. So it never gets this problem. But TCP, connection. How does it form a connection? Well, in order to form a connection, a user sends a message to the server. It's a SYN message. I don't know where that comes from, but it sends an SYN message to the server saying, I would like to connect. The server sends SYN acknowledgement saying, oh, okay, you can connect. Along with the yes and no, there's several parameters passing by about how much you can send before you have to acknowledge and other things, but that's not important for this class. Take the networks class to learn about that. But it sends a request, it sends an acknowledgement, and then the user sends an acknowledgement back. Now, okay, the server got a request, sent acknowledgement, got acknowledgement back to the user. Everything is fine. We're ready to go. The connection has been established. We're done. But let's imagine we're not doing it that way. An attacker sends many SYN requests to a server saying, I want to connect, I want to connect, I want to connect. And the server says, okay, acknowledge, acknowledge, acknowledge. But the attacker doesn't respond to that, never sends that third acknowledgement. You notice that last acknowledgement that has to go back? It never does that. Meanwhile, the server's over here waiting for that acknowledgement. It saves information. When you send the SYN request, it goes, oh, connection is being established. It's from this computer, this IP address, and we've got this information. So we'll save all that information and wait for it to get the acknowledgement and continue on. But when it doesn't get that acknowledgement, it's waiting for the other side to send it. Now, it doesn't wait forever. There is a timer. It shows a little clock here. Eventually, it gets tired of waiting and will discard the information it got. But the timer is usually lengthy in the world. It's usually in seconds, multiple seconds. And in the computer world, multiple seconds is a long time when things are happening in milliseconds. So, and in the milliseconds, you can send lots of requests. So while you've blocked and you fill up all the available requests, and other users can't sign on because the system's all full of requests that are waiting on it. Now, in the TCP protocol, a computer has ports. Ports are not physical things, they're just logical ports. I want to connect to port 80, which is your server, and I'm connecting from whatever port number. Pick a port number. And then they pair off, giving ports. I may use port 5,203 over here, and you may use port 10,807 over there, but that's it. We each know each other's number, and that's how we communicate. Fine, it works. It's one of the things we're establishing is that we're knowing how to communicate, because you not have to send the message to that computer, you have to make sure you send it to the right program on that computer. The port number is a 16-bit number. And as we all know from our powers of 2 stuff, that 2 to the 16 is 64K. It's actually 65,000 something. But so there's only 64,000 some possible connections. Well, if you send them out there as fast as you can send 64,000 in less than a second. And now the thing is full. And if it's going to wait for more than a second before it times out, you filled it up and it's not going anywhere. And so it's full of these half-open connections. And a way to when we fake this, instead of doing it to the same computer, backing up, our evil attacker here is sending all these SYN requests, but he's falsifying the return address of all of them. So they all go to some possibly non-existent computer, or maybe even existing computers. But an existing computer gets a SYN ACT from a computer when it didn't send a SYN, it's just going to ignore it. So what is this doing? I didn't make that request. And so it ignores it. So it fills up. Now, what can you do about that? Well, one thing you do is reduce the timeout wait. If you do that, it means when you have a slow network, maybe a legitimate user won't get on because they tried to send that SYN ACT, but it took a long time to get there. So you have to find a time that's fast enough so that, I guess the time is fast enough, so things will get there when they're generally working well, and very rarely, well-working program be caught. Of course, look at things that are all coming from the same source, same address. Minimize the amount of information you send. Yes, don't try to save too much information. And then use more memory. Computers have a lot of memory these days. You can hardly buy a computer with less than 4 gigabytes of memory. Some of us with gray beards remember when machines had far less memory. The original PCs came out with a maximum of 64K of memory. 64K, that's 1,000 bytes, not megabytes, not gigabytes. 64,000 bytes was the maximum you could put on it. So computers had a lot less memory. Now you've got billions of bytes. A gigabyte is a billion bytes, and they're just information is sloshing around in this huge machine. So if you need more space, use more space. You got it. All right, let's try this question. Gotcha. Oh, okay. All right. Here in class, most people picked B. Online, most people picked A. The folks sitting here know the answer. The answer is false. No, TCP/IP does not, or the secure handshake, the transport layer security. If you look at it, I've shown this picture before. You send a request, sends it. This is the SYN. This is the SYN ACT, and then in order to complete it, you have to send more messages. Well, if it doesn't send this message, you're still stuck. So while there are more messages here setting up the transport layer security, they don't stop the SYN. So the lockout occurs, the SYN flood attack occurs if you don't send this third message. That would be a request from the client, not only acknowledging the connection to the server, but setting up a certificate request, because you're going to do the secure layer. In other words, you're not only connecting, but you want to connect them. And you have to pass certificates around. You have to pick up a random password that you're going to use for encrypting this. There are many other ways to bring a system down. User ID lockout. It doesn't necessarily lock out the whole system. It just locks out one user. A lot of times when a system lets you log in, after so many bad tries, it stops. Sometimes it'll stop and make you wait for a minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Make you wait until you call up tech support and say, please unlock me. That's a useful feature because systems want to prevent attackers from attacking over and over again as fast as they can. So they want to slow down the rate of attack so they don't allow too many sequential attacks. So this, though, if you go out there and try to log on to an account too many times, the wrong one, that person cannot get in. I think everybody on your iPhone, you have 10 tries to type in the password. After that, you've bricked it. It's not going anywhere. It will not unlock. There are permanent denial of service attacks. These are ones that damage the system in some way, so it will not reboot. PDoS, permanent denial of service, is something called flashing, often because it involves flashing the BIOS or the firmware. If you can change that, the system will not reboot. Turn it off, turn it on, doesn't start again. That's pretty nasty stuff. Okay, distributed denial of service is probably the most nasty one. Distributed denial of service, as mentioned before, comes from multiple computers. Okay, in the diagram here, we have the attacker at the top, many controllers. Sometimes you don't, just the attacker may individually send out messages to all the computers in its bot network. These are all computers that have malware that's been stored on it. The malware may do nothing. You don't notice it. It just sits there waiting for a message to come in from the network. Very small, unobtrusive program, not using any CPU resources, very little memory. It's just waiting. And then when it gets the message tells you, go to this, send messages, start sending lots and lots of messages to the victim. Basically, the attacker sends out the victim's IP address, and then all the bots start going. Now, the bots can be other programs. They can be other computers. They can be your laptop, your desktop. Bots can often be Internet of Things, all these things that are internet connected these days. Your doorbell with a camera, that has an internet because you can look at your phone and see who's at your door anywhere. Well, that has an internet connection. If the doorbell is not properly secured, somebody can put malware in the doorbell, and the doorbell can send things out. And of course, who knows, clocks, washing machines. I believe my washing machine can connect to the network, but I've never allowed it. So can my oven. If you actually connect these things for whatever feature you want, that you want to connect, they're then susceptible to attack. And somebody, if the manufacturer of the oven has not protected it, the most common thing is they haven't changed the password. They all use the same default password. So the user, the attacker can find out what is the password of, an Acme oven. Then it can send that request to the Acme oven, and it will think it's a. And so there are lots of doorbells out there. There are millions and millions of these things in the country. Doorbells and baby monitors, all sorts of internet connected things that can be attacked. And they make a great botnet. Most of them. And then again, it's controlled by a specific machine. Sometimes when they install the malicious software, they install it with the victim's identity and or date. Now, let's see. Put it in here, wait to the magic time, and then launch the attack. Other times, they'll wait until they get a message from the controller to do it. There have been some big ones in the world, almost out of time. Way back 1996, first one. The biggest one was September 2017, about 6 years ago. Google got hit with a peak of 2.5 terabytes per second of false requests coming in. That's a lot. Yes, and I asked, yes, I asked the other day, what's happening in cyberspace between Hamas and Israel? Well, Killnet, Russian volunteers, announced they would attack all Israel government sites. I have a friend who lives here in Greensboro, works on a security company in Greensboro, but the company is owned by Israel. Israel does a lot of security stuff. So they're probably more protected than anybody I can think of. Another thing is sometimes distributed denial of service attacks are there just to distract the IT staff from another attack that's going on simultaneously. That because all of a sudden there's this disaster over on this side that they're working on that they won't notice something happening on the other side. Okay, real quickly, unintentional, occasionally extremely popular website has a link to a not so powerful website. And it's very, oh, have you seen this? Everybody goes to that system. And so everybody's going there. My favorite is the also going that Universal Tube and Roll Form or YouTube. YouTube.com. Well, when YouTube came out, the tube company started getting lots of requests because everybody wanted to go to YouTube, but that's not them. The YouTube company, that a legal thing, YouTube company provided them a lot of servers, and now Universal Tube and Roll Form Company puts advertisements on their sites. Just get hits off. Okay, we're out of time, so we're going to skip this. Oh, so that's it. Oh, I should have shown you the schedule just real quickly. Oh, I need to show this to you again online. Sorry, he's not always behaving like you'd like. Where happened to Zoom? Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. All right, I like. There was a site that was selling tools to do distributed denial of service. They're building bots for you. Hey, you don't have to know how to do this. You can just buy the resources from somebody. Well, the company is doing that. The FBI nabbed them, and they put this on their website. It's kind of interesting. Okay, real quickly, we just did denial of service, computer forensics, online only next Monday. And then privacy a week from today. A week from Monday is the AI impact of cybersecurity. And then 2 weeks from today is Thanksgiving. Well, actually, it's the day before Thanksgiving. But at A&T, there are no classes on that day. Tomorrow, Wellness Day, no classes. Take the day off. Relax. Spring registration. Make sure you register for your classes. Course evaluations. Make sure you do that for all your classes. It is important. The administration looks at that with great detail, so be sure you do that. That's it. Anybody have any questions about the material? If not, see you next week, online only.
Thank you, Professor.